Father started us off with a greeting for the new year. If we had gone through the whole litany of things that we might talk about this morning, it would have been a long introduction. The Feast of Mary, the Solemnity of Mary, Mother of God, the passing of our beloved Pope Benedict, the World Day of Peace that the Church celebrates every first day of the year, and the first day of 2023. For all of these things, happy day to all. Mary, Mother of God, Mother and model disciple, and intercessor for us, Mother for us, we celebrate today the decision made at the Council of Ephesus as a way to articulate our understanding of Mary. Mary at that great council in 431 was called Theotokos, a big Greek word we can all use at dinner tonight, meaning God-bearer. That Mary indeed did bear not a human person who was then somehow elevated to God, but the very second person in the Trinity, who, as the Second Vatican Council in Lumen Gentium says to us, who received his human nature from Mary. And by that relationship is the Mother of God. And also then by that, the Mother of us. But we can see in today's gospel this element of Mary being not only Mother of Christ, but also his first disciple and the model disciple. We hear that wonderful line, and Mary kept all these things, reflecting on them in her heart. In other translations, we might hear that word ponder. To ponder, to go deep within. So in Mary, what do we see? We see Mary stay with Jesus, not just there at the crib, but through his ministry, through his teaching, all the way to the foot of the cross, to the reception of his Spirit at Pentecost. Mary, the one who stayed with Jesus, who through in this moment, pondering what the shepherds had said, what she had experienced at the Annunciation, this birth of her child, what all of this meant, these movements of God within her life and in the life of the world, that it wasn't enough for Mary to live on the surface. It was to go deeper. And finally then to obey, to stay and ponder and obey. And for Americans, when we hear the word obey, it just drives us batty. But obey means nothing less than to find in God's will our fulfillment. And God's will is nothing less than that we love all that he has given us. Mary, who knew poverty, Mary, who knew what it was to live a poor and simple life, holds within her hands and in her life and at her breast the greatest gift to humanity of all time, the very Christ child. Again, Lumen Gentium says to us that Mary occupies a place in the church which is the highest after Christ and also the closest to us. What a wonderful gift Mary, the Mother of God, is to us as mother, as model, as intercessor. Our gospel reading today. Then we have to talk today about the death of our beloved Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Emeritus Benedict, who for many, if you listen to the news, he's known for two things: his resignation, and he was a hard-edged conservative. Both of which are quite unfair to who this magnificent theologian was. Benedict's desire of his life was to be nothing more than a scholar. He wanted to work in a university. He wanted to be a theologian out of humility, seeing himself as simply a humble priest, but open to God's call. That openness, that humility characterized his life as he went from priest, theologian, bishop, cardinal, head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, and pope, with each of those calls thrust upon him, he too stayed and pondered and obeyed in humility. It's evidence even in the imperfection of his papacy. You know, one of the things that we have, a penchant that we have in the church, is to think that our popes are perfect, that they have every dimension of their life together, that they hold every charism and every gift that a human person could ever have. And the reality is, some popes are great theologians and not all that great of an administrator. Others are great administrators and not that great of a man of prayer. That popes fit the moment of the church, and Pope Benedict fit this particular moment in the church because he was able to teach us, even in the selection of his name, Benedict. He picked his name from Benedict of Nursia, the founder of the Benedictine monastery, whose rule of life has two important words: listen and humility. Again, that theme of humility there before us, evidenced even in these last days of his life. When the church looks back on this great theologian, there's one line that he used that was picked up by Pope Francis and continues to be used so regularly. He reminded us that we are not called to believe in a doctrine. We're not called to believe in a set of teachings. That we're called to believe in Jesus Christ. And that Jesus Christ is the heart of our life as the second person in the Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit. So much so we hear this morning, reflective of Paul's letter to the Galatians. In Paul's letters to the Galatians, we heard it well. In the fullness of time, God sent his Son, born of a woman, his Son. He said, his dying words, we're told this morning, were in his native German, Jesus, I love you. He knew the heart. His humility led him to the heart of our faith. Mary, Mother of God, Benedict XVI, and then the World Day of Peace, sisters and brothers. Since 1968, the church, Catholic Church, has honored the first day of the year as a time for us to pray and reflect on the gift of peace. We heard it in not Moses' words to Aaron, but God's words to Moses and then to Aaron, to say, this is how you will speak. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. That peace is not something that we go and get. Peace isn't something that we give unless we have received it. That peace is God's will and gift for us. We live in a world with such tensions and dis-ease, conflict. Certainly at the global level, the tensions are rising. Internationally, culturally, politically, at the social level, even in the church. And yet we hear God's promise this morning reminding us on this World Day of Peace for us to desire and will the good word that the Lord look upon us kindly and give us peace. Pope Francis, in his message for today on the World Day of Peace, had a couple of things that are important for us to hear and to embrace. He said, certainly after experiencing the fragility of our own lives and the world around us from COVID-19, was the realization that we need one another, that our greatest and yet most fragile treasure is our shared humanity, as brothers and sisters, children of God, and that none of us can be saved alone. Says to us, let our hearts be changed. We can no longer think exclusively of carving out space for our personal or national interest. Instead, we must think in terms of the common good, recognizing that we belong to a greater community and opening our minds and our hearts to universal human fraternity. What a call for us, sisters and brothers, a challenge for us in 2023 on this World Day of Peace, the day of the Mother of God, when we're reminded by Pope Benedict of our connection to one another through this central teaching of our faith of our Lord Jesus Christ. And so we arrive here this first day of 2023, a time of danger and a day of great hope, sisters and brothers. Each day, you and I, we are all called to be agents of the Gospels, disciples, siblings, those called to bring about God's blessing of peace. Perhaps we might carry all of these words as faith resolutions for the new year, or perhaps just one. There's the call to imitate Mary by taking our faith more seriously through greater reading, study, prayer, and conversation, pondering on what we hear, see, and believe, living a deeper faith, staying, pondering, and obeying Jesus. Or perhaps it's to recognize the welcome of the Spirit in our heart, that it is through this man born of a woman that we might live with the humility of Benedict XVI. Or the call to be peacemakers in our lives, actively cooperating and receiving and sharing the promise of peace. More than at the simple moment in Mass when we share the sign of peace, but to let that receiving and giving of peace characterize our life through 2023. 3 possibilities: deeper faith, genuine humility, shared peace. Again, deeper faith, genuine humility, shared peace. To which is God calling each of us this first day of 2023? If we accept and receive and live that call, when we celebrate the end of this year, it indeed will be a different year.
Please like, subscribe, or comment below.